residents of Riverlea, which is south of Johannesburg, are calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Police Minister Bheki Cele to help boost security in the area. And this follows a shootout between suspected rival illegal mining gangs. So to help us take a look at these latest developments, we join on the line by lead researcher at Benchmarks Foundation, David van Wyk. David, good morning and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much, Sakina, for having me on your show.
David, I know you've been doing quite a bit of work in the Riverlea area and around the illegal mining that's been happening there and the Zama Zamas, of course. But now we saw over the weekend a very worrying situation develop whereby there seems to be warfare, as it were, turf war between the Zama Zamas playing out, unfortunately, to the detriment of residents in that area. But just by way of background, what has been happening with the Zama Zamas in the Riverlea area, David?
Well, by way of background, over the past 10 or 15 years when we've worked there, the main groups of Zama Zamas in that area were Ndebele speaking, mainly from Zimbabwe, but they employed Zulu security from KwaZulu-Natal to ensure that their operations are safe and so on. And it was relatively peaceful. However, the Riverlea residents have been very concerned about the growth of Zamampilo, which is near Horseshoe. If you come up from Nazareth Road on Main Reef Road, past the corner, you hit Zamampilo on your right-hand side. And it's right next to the residential area of Horseshoe. And the people in that area are absolutely terrified now because there were big gun battles over the weekend. But even this morning, I've got footage that was sent to me of large numbers of guys with big blankets and so on walking in big groups towards Zamampilo. And it would seem as if there is a movement of people from Durban Roodepoort Deep Village on the far west rand in the Randfontein area towards Zamampilo, and those would be Basotho miners moving towards Zamampilo. Just once again, as Benchmarks, we want to reiterate, this is the cost you pay for not closing mines properly, for not rehabilitating mines properly, and not for regulating mining properly.
So interesting, David, as you say, it seems as though from your explanation, you have a group of Zama Zamas who used to mine in another area trying to move in on the so-called turf of another group. So how common is this? Because we know about Zama Zamas operating around Gauteng as an example, but what does this mean? Have they exhausted whatever they were mining in the area that they were in?
Well, it might also mean that the pressure on them in the Randfontein Roodepoort area is very high, and as a consequence of that pressure, they are moving to areas that have less pressure. The Zamampilo informal settlement is about 1 kilometer away from Langlaagte police station. George Harrison Park is just across the road from the Langlaagte police station, and George Harrison Park, they've operated openly with policemen from that police station taking bribes from them and so on. And the community in Riverlea alleged that bribes also are passed hands in the Zamampilo area and so on. Now we are having a situation where I don't know whether it's the big syndicates and so on that's behind this move, pushing these people into the central void. They were on the western void, where the old mines were abandoned on the far west. Of course, on the eastern void, you have Mozambicans mainly, and so you are starting to see a new rivalry, which is very worrying because TC Esterhuizen Primary School is located right there, right next to major operations of these guys. And if the shooting starts taking place there, children going to school this morning could be at risk. There's also a mosque quite close to the area as well, and worshippers at 12 o'clock and so on will be at risk as well. Really, I think that we need to look deeper than the actual foot soldiers. We need to find out who is behind this, and we need to actually clamp down on the big guys. Unless we do that, it's just like with drugs. We're going to just endlessly have to deal with fighting in the streets without actually cutting off the head of the problem.
So, David, you spoke earlier about closing these mines properly. So why is that not happening, given that the mining charter, one would imagine, would be very clear on what needs to happen, among other things, with other policy documents as well?
The Minerals and Petroleum Resource Development Act, I think it's Section 41 to 47, very clearly states what should happen when a mine closes down. But you see, what is happening is that the law has a loophole, and the loophole is that when a big company finds that a mine is no longer profitable, they sell it to a smaller operator. When the smaller operator gets on site, they might discover that it's actually not profitable to be on that mine, and then they abandon it. So you have a constant turnover. All those mines under apartheid belong to 2 or 3 companies. Very big monopolies. And those ones have largely left the country. AngloGold Ashanti has left the country. BHP Billiton has left the country. Others are going to follow suit because the minerals are no longer profitable for large-scale industrial mining. And we haven't planned for a post-mining economy. And so when these mines get abandoned, very often even the mine workers are abandoned, and they don't get their pensions, they don't get their UIF, they don't get the silicosis fund money if they are ill, and so on. And when we do research in the labor-sending areas in Lesotho, the Zama Zamas there who come from those villages tell us we are going to fetch our fathers' pensions.
Wow. Which is, of course, a very, very worrying situation, because it's not just about what's actually happening with, the turf wars or the mining itself, but, of course, the infrastructure and the concern, David, about what is happening underground. And we see sinkholes now, which I suppose we were suspecting would happen at some point or another, now really, starting to take form and shape in certain parts of Gauteng.
Well, if you look at Kutsong is full of sinkholes. But the sinkholes has to do with the geological substructure, which is a dolomitic substructure of conglomerate. And it dissolves very easily in acid water. And we've had a very heavy rain season last year, and so the levels underground have risen up, and in some places it's breaking through to the surface. So under Main Reef Road, mainly, you will have real problems with sinkholes, and you've had some sinkholes there in the past already, because the substructure is being eaten away by this acidic water. Look, the thing is that all those mines, you have to continuously pump the water, even if they are closed. And no one is pumping the water at the moment. You see, no one has planned for the abandonment of those mines. There's a whole range of things that need to be done to ensure that these old mines are safe and don't pose a danger. You had sinkholes out in Springs and so on as well, partly to do with Zama Zamas, but mainly to do with the fact that we are not actually doing the necessary maintenance to make sure that these tunnels underground, the central void, the eastern void, the western void, are actually safe. And, while the mines were operating, they were pumping water all the time so that they could work in dry conditions. But no one is pumping water anymore. And so the water levels underground is rising. And sinkholes is going to become a really, really major problem in Johannesburg, to the south of the city.
Well, David, we'll leave it there for this morning, but clearly there's a lot going on, and many people who have to take responsibility for the situation that is developing. But for today, we're going to park it there. Thanks so much, David van Wyk, lead researcher at the Benchmarks Foundation. And as we had the discussion, I just received a message from someone out in the Riverlea area saying, good morning, Sakina. The shooting also led to the death of an innocent community member last week. So it's not just what we see this week, but this is ongoing, and something needs to be done.